My name is Ilara, and my world was once a quiet, comfortable rhythm built around one person, my son Julian. After my husband's passing, Julian became my entire universe. He was a brilliant man, a master of complex financial models and corporate law, and I adored him. For years, he spoke of a family legacy, and a deed to a forgotten piece of land deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a remote cabin that had been in our family for generations, hidden away from the world. He promised it was a sanctuary, a place where we could escape the noise of the city and reconnect with our roots. "It's the only asset left from our heritage, Mom," he'd say with a glint in his eye. "It's our destiny." I believed every word. His ambition, which I mistook for purpose, was a poison in his heart that had already begun to turn him cold. He convinced me to transfer all my earthly possessions and savings into his care, a trust, he said, to make the journey and our eventual retreat to the cabin a seamless and stress-free transition. I had no idea that the family legacy he spoke of was a cruel lie, a trap meticulously set. He was not leading me to a sanctuary, but to a place of silent, forgotten isolation where he planned for me to die. The cabin, he said, held a secret, a treasure map to a vast, untouched vein of gold that our ancestors had discovered and documented. He needed the last of my family's old ledgers, the ones with the markings and the key to the map. He'd waited until my health was frail, my mind a little foggy, and my heart completely trusting. He saw my innocence not as a virtue, but as a weakness to exploit. He saw my life not as a gift, but as a temporary barrier to his greed. He did not know that a mother's love, when pushed to the very edge, is a divine force. He did not know that a single tearful prayer, whispered in the cold, dark silence of a forsaken cabin, would not only save me but would also trigger a cascade of events that would unravel his world, his fortune, and his very memory, leaving him lost in a world he no longer recognized. He was about to learn that you can take everything from a mother, but you can never take away her faith. And that faith was about to bring him to his knees, not in riches, but in destitution. Before we continue, make sure you follow our page so you don't miss our next true stories. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support helps us share these messages with more people who need hope. Julian's grand plan began with a series of seemingly innocent acts. He spent months researching the cabin's history, poring over old family journals and letters that I had kept in the attic. He told me he was writing a family history, a way to honor our heritage. I thought it was sweet. He'd ask me about the strange symbols in the margins of the journals, about the peculiar phrases my great-grandmother had written about the spring that breathes life, and the stone of true north. He spoke of it with a feigned passion that I, in my naivete, believed was genuine. He learned everything he could about the old place, its secluded location, the lack of cell service, and the nearest town being a 2-day hike away. He had every detail planned, from the route he would take to the final act of his betrayal. He convinced me that the cabin, an untouched relic from a forgotten era, was worth millions, but that its worth could only be unlocked by a key that lay in the old journals. He said he would take me to the cabin, and once there we would decode the secret together. It was a beautiful lie, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He came to pick me up on a cold autumn morning, the air crisp with the promise of winter. I was so excited, my heart fluttering with anticipation. He had a brand new SUV, stocked with what he called wilderness supplies. I packed a single suitcase with a few warm sweaters and my favorite book, believing we would only be there for a short, beautiful trip. The drive was long and silent, taking us deeper and deeper into the forest, away from the familiar hum of the city. He drove for hours until the asphalt gave way to a winding gravel road and finally, a narrow dirt path barely visible beneath the fallen leaves. My heart began to pound with a nervous energy, a sense of foreboding I couldn't explain. We arrived just as the sun was setting, casting long, menacing shadows across the old cabin. It was beautiful but also eerie, the silent woods seeming to watch us, the air holding a stillness that felt more like a warning than a welcome. Inside, the cabin was just as Julian had described: rustic, dusty, and filled with a history that felt both comforting and a little unsettling. I was cold, and he told me to rest while he got the fireplace going. He had me sit on an old worn armchair and handed me a mug of hot tea he had prepared from a thermos. I sipped it, feeling a warmth spread through me, a sense of peace settling over my racing heart. But as I drank, a strange drowsiness began to creep in. My head felt heavy, my thoughts began to drift, and my vision blurred. I looked up at Julian, who was no longer smiling. His face was a mask of cold, hard calculation. "The tea has a little something extra, Mom," he said, his voice stripped of all its warmth. "Just a small dose to make sure you sleep." My mind, clouded as it was, began to piece together the truth. The long drive, the isolated cabin, the drugged tea. He had never intended to find a treasure with me. He had intended to bury me. I tried to speak, to call out to him, but the words wouldn't come. My body felt like a lead weight, and my eyelids, heavy as they were, finally closed. I fell into a deep, dreamless slumber, a silent prisoner in a house I once called my legacy. I woke to a cold so profound it felt like a physical blow, a cold that had burrowed deep into my bones, replacing the warmth of the tea with a chilling emptiness. The fire was out, the windows were a frosty white, and the sun was nowhere to be seen. The cabin's ancient wood seemed to creak with a desolate sadness that mirrored my own. I struggled to sit up, my head throbbing, my body aching with a strange, unfamiliar weakness that felt like a phantom limb. A sharp sense of dread, cold and unforgiving as a knife, pierced my heart. I called out for Julian, my voice a raspy whisper that disappeared into the vast, silent emptiness of the cabin. Only the sound of my own frantic breathing answered me. I stumbled to the front door, my legs barely holding me up, and grasped the cold iron handle. It was locked from the outside. I slammed my weak body against the door, once, twice, a third time, the pathetic thud swallowed by the thick logs. Panic, sharp and metallic, rose in my throat. I moved from window to window, scraping the frost away with my fingernails, leaving jagged trails of clear glass to see the truth. The path was empty, the fresh tire tracks a cruel, mocking reminder of his escape. He hadn't just left me. He had sealed me in. He had taken my phone, my keys, and my purse. My heart pounded with the horrifying realization that he had left me with no food, no fire, and no hope. He had left me to die, a slow, silent death from starvation and exposure. The cold seeped into my bones, a chilling echo of the betrayal in my heart. The tears came then, a hot, endless stream that did nothing to warm my frozen face. I fell to my knees, my body shaking with a sorrow so deep it felt like it would tear me apart. My son, my one and only child, the boy I had raised with so much love, had abandoned me to die. I was not just left to die. I was abandoned in a place that represented all the false hope and trust one had given him. He had used my love against me, turning my most cherished bond into the instrument of my demise. The cabin, once a symbol of family and heritage, was now my tomb. The silence of the forest was a silent condemnation of his actions. I was just a victim, a forgotten piece of property to be discarded once my value had been extracted. I had no fight left in me. I was ready to surrender, to let the cold take me. I was ready to close my eyes and join my husband in a world free from this pain. But as I lay there, my body growing numb with the cold, a different kind of prayer formed on my lips. It wasn't a desperate cry for rescue. It was a prayer of surrender, of forgiveness, and of love. "God," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "please don't let my son's soul be lost. He has forgotten who he is, and in doing so he has forgotten me. Please, I ask only for his salvation, for his purpose to be restored. And for me, I ask only for peace." I didn't feel a sudden surge of warmth or a flash of light. Instead, I felt a profound stillness, a deep sense of peace that washed away the cold and the fear. And in that stillness, I heard a voice, not with my ears but with my soul. "Look to the stone of true north, the voice said, soft as a breeze through the trees. I opened my eyes, a new energy coursing through me. I looked to the north wall of the cabin, the one with the crooked picture frame, and saw a large, flat stone that was different from the rest. I ran my hand over it, and my fingers found a deep crevice I hadn't noticed before. I pressed down, and with a soft click, the stone shifted, revealing a hidden passage. Inside was a small, dusty cellar, filled with jars of preserved food, dried herbs, and a small sealed spring that ran from the very heart of the mountain. It was the spring that breathes life, from my great-grandmother's journal. I drank from the spring, the cool, pure water washing away the last of the poison in my body. I was not alone. The cabin was a living thing, a sanctuary that had been waiting for me to find it. I had been given a new purpose, to survive. And as I survived, a new truth was revealed to me. The journals were not a map to a hidden treasure of gold. They were a map of a different kind. The treasure was not gold, but a prophecy. The ledger spoke of a family member, a lost heir, who would one day inherit the curse of greed and turn against their own blood. The prophecy foretold that this lost heir would lose everything, and that only through true humility and service would they find their way back. The true purpose of the cabin was not to be a source of material wealth, but a place of spiritual awakening. The cabin was a living testament to faith, a place where a mother's love could be a beacon for a lost son. Julian, in his feverish haste to escape the mountain's icy grip, had driven through the night. His mind consumed not by the treacherous road but by visions of a golden future. His heart, now a cold, hollow space where a son's love once resided, raced with the thrill of $1 million score. He imagined the lavish parties, the penthouse view, the respect he'd command in the world of high finance. But the mountains, ancient and unforgiving, had a different plan. A sudden, fierce winter storm, the kind that strikes without warning and blankets the world in a thick, crystalline sheet of ice, descended upon him. He lost control of the sleek, expensive SUV he had so proudly bought with my money. The vehicle, a monument to his greed, careened off the winding mountain road, a deafening screech of twisted metal and grinding glass echoing into the silent night before it plunged into a deep, jagged ravine. He survived, but not intact. He awoke in a sterile hospital room with a throbbing, blank mind. The severe head injury he sustained left him with retrograde amnesia, a cruel and fitting irony. He woke up with no memory of his past, no recollection of the cabin, of his meticulously planned heist, or of the mother he had abandoned to a silent grave. The treasure he had so ruthlessly sought became an impossible dream, a ghost in a past he couldn't remember, a void in his soul that he couldn't name. He was a man without a history, a life without a story. His release from the hospital was as quiet and lonely as his arrival at the cabin. With no one to identify him, no family to claim him, and no memory of his past life, he was simply another face in the crowd. The authorities, unable to find any next of kin or personal information, simply released him to the city, a man with no name and no past. He lost the deed, the family journals he'd stolen, and all his worldly possessions in the crash. The expensive suits he had worn to his fancy meetings were replaced by the thin, threadbare rags provided by the hospital. The Rolex he once flaunted was gone, replaced by a simple plastic wristband that listed him only as John Doe. He lived on the streets, a face in a sea of homeless people, a ghost in the very city he had once planned to conquer. His brilliant mind, once a complex machine of corporate law and financial models, was now a blank slate, a useless tool in a world of harsh reality. He felt a deep, nameless emptiness, a profound sense of loss for something he couldn't remember. The poetic justice of his fate was not in his suffering, but in the fact that he was haunted by a nameless, aching loss, a sense of having lost something infinitely precious that he couldn't remember. He had betrayed his mother for a golden future, and that future had been snatched away, replaced by a life of destitution and a memory of a void. He had been so obsessed with material wealth that he had been stripped of everything, and his journey to redemption would begin with nothing but the cold pavement and the silent, heavy weight of a past he couldn't recall. The man who had taken my identity and my life had lost his own. He was living the very life he had intended for me, but without the benefit of a guiding hand or a divine purpose. His fall from grace was not just a punishment, but a profound resetting of his soul, a chance to learn humility and compassion from the very bottom. In the quiet solitude of the cabin, I had discovered a different kind of wealth, the wealth of self-reliance, of faith, and of purpose. The prophecy was not just for Julian. It was for me, too. It was a call to a new life, a life dedicated to a higher purpose. I spent the rest of that winter in the small cellar, surviving on the jars of food my ancestors had preserved. I learned to tend to the fire, to find comfort in the silence, and to see God's hand in every small act of survival. The cabin, once my prison, had become my sanctuary. I had entered a state of prayer that was more profound than any I had ever known. My focus was no longer on escape, but on acceptance and finding a new path. The cold, once my enemy, was now a teacher, reminding me of my own resilience. The solitude, once a source of terror, was now a source of deep, abiding peace. After the last of the snow had melted, I found my way back to civilization, a woman forever changed. I sold the cabin, not for its supposed gold, but for its spiritual power. The sale, handled by a local real estate agent who was moved by my story, was enough to give me a new start. I used the money to start a foundation, a shelter for the homeless, and a place where people could find a new path, a new purpose. My home was no longer a place of my own, but a place for everyone, a testament to God's love and mercy. It was a cold winter night years later. The scent of warm soup filled the air as I served food to the homeless in the shelter I had built. I had just finished handing a bowl to a man with a tattered coat and a long, unkempt beard when I saw him. A man with a blank, haunted expression. His eyes devoid of recognition. His face thin and drawn. He was my son, Julian. He looked so much older, so much more fragile. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know the cabin, the betrayal, or the family he had lost. My heart lurched in my chest, a mixture of a mother's pain and a newfound, profound peace. I didn't say anything, didn't tell him who I was. I just served him a warm meal and gave him a fresh blanket, my hands trembling ever so slightly as I did. He took the food without a word, his eyes distant, lost in a world he couldn't remember. He ate slowly, his hands shaking, a ghost of the ambitious, confident boy he once was. The prophecy had come to pass. He had lost everything, but his journey back was just beginning. It was up to him to find his way, to seek a different kind of treasure, a treasure that could not be stolen or sold. I had forgiven him, not for him but for myself. The bitterness had been replaced by a profound love, a love that transcended memory and betrayal. I couldn't save him from the consequences of his actions, but I could give him a chance at a new life, a life built on a foundation of integrity and grace. And as he walked away, a ghost in the city, I knew that our story was not over, but that a new chapter, a chapter of redemption, was just beginning. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past, but about letting go of the bitterness that poisoned the present. My son had taken my earthly possessions, but he had given me something far more valuable, a profound understanding of faith, a life of purpose, and a peace that transcended all pain. This is a story about faith, about forgiveness, and about the transformative power of a single prayer. It's a reminder that even when we are abandoned and lost, God has a purpose for us, a path to a life more abundant than we could ever imagine. My son's betrayal led me to a new life, a life of service and prosperity. His greed led him to a life of destitution, a profound emptiness that could only be filled with humility and a renewed purpose. I had to forgive my son, not for his sake, but for my own. And in doing so, I found a peace that money could never buy. His journey back to me was a testament to God's love and mercy. And for that I am grateful. If this message resonated with you, I pray you'll do a few things for me. Please follow our page so you don't miss our next true story. Give this video a like to help us spread this message of hope. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Your support helps us reach more people who are going through their own trials. Thank you, and may God bless you.